The Monroe County Historical Museum presents Monroe County Memories.
Welcome to Monroe County Memories. My name is Alice Binkley. I am a docent at the Monroe County Historical Museum. Today we are pleased to have two special guests, Stella Alexander, who is a teacher at Honey Creek, and Harold Weddle, who was a pupil of hers. Before we go on with Honey Creek, let us start a tour of the museum. Our first stop will be the museum store with Kathy McFall.
It's easy to see how Monroe County Museum exhibits and programs provide history lessons. But few suspect the museum is also educating people through the museum store.
Well, the store is basically an extension of the museum. The museum's function is to conserve and preserve and to educate, and we try and do the same thing. We also have the additional function of getting revenue for the museum. But the items that we have in the museum, we hope, are an extension of that educational mission. And then, of course, with the books, that's conserving and preserving information. And we have preserves from one of our local producers, and they're basically made in the old-fashioned way with just fruit and sugar. There's no preservatives or anything. So that's sort of how we see ourselves.
The store carries toys and treasures, candies and cards, and materials for hands-on learning activities. It also has books.
We have quite an extensive book collection, and we've tried to have a range of books that would meet all ages. We have reproduction McGuffey readers, and we have books that young people, preteen, would be interested in all the way up to adults. And we also have books that instruct, for example, quilt books, and that kind of thing.
The store also carries several reproductions of housewares and other items.
Well, one reproduction, for example, would be the Clay City pottery. Now, that's pottery that's been made for like 150 years by this company. They don't still make it. They don't still hand-toss the pottery as it was done originally, but it's made to look very authentic, like the original.
The museum store travels to special exhibits, like the Civil War reenactment at Karst Farm Park.
When we have a special event like that, we try and get some items that will particularly fit in with it. And we took the museum store, boxed up things and took things out to the reenactment and had a little store set up. And there were books there and some other items that would have been appropriate for the time.
But the store is always open when the museum is open. You'll find it just inside the main entrance.
You can find many things at the museum store that are educational. You can find things that will increase your knowledge and your appreciation of your heritage. Now we have two guests that I want to introduce to you. They're special in our community and who have worked with Honey Creek. First, Stella Alexander, who taught her first year of teaching at Honey Creek when she was just 18 years old. And she's taught in other schools in Bloomington. Some of you may have gone to school to her at Rogers or at Child's School. Later, she became the coordinator of the Heritage Center of Studies for the Schools Corporation. Harold Weddle is an important person in our community. He's a well-known businessman and has been known as a building contractor. He went to school. He was a pupil of Stella's that first year that she went to school. Now, since I was a co-chairman with Stella in setting up the renovation of Honey Creek and setting up the program out there, I know that these two people were very important in getting Honey Creek going. So we're so pleased to have them here today. And could you help us fill in some of the places how Honey Creek really got started?
You want me to begin?
That would be fine.
Well, you don't want me to go way back. You want me to start when we started restoring it, right?
Well,
how we happened to restore it. Or do you
I
want
think
me
you
to...
ought to tell about your grandmother teaching
Oh,
there.
yes, okay. Well, I started teaching, as Alice said, at Honey Creek in my grandmother was 1870, not I. But I started teaching there when I was 18, and my grandmother informed me that she had taught there in 1870 in the old log school, not the Honey Creek now. And she did tell me about the kind of program they had and what they did in those days. And she and I went to a reunion there, which was delightful. So that's my first experience with Honey Creek. And I could tell you many things about the teaching experience. I suppose Harold and I could talk all afternoon, and you don't have that much time. So I think I would like to start out by saying that the community helped me grow up, and they were wonderful to me. They all took me under their wings, the parents, the children, everybody. And it was just like one big family. And I surely enjoyed, you know, spending the night with the pupils and all of the things that we did together. And I learned an awful lot that first year about myself, about people, about the way we work together, how much we love each other. And I think Harold probably has tales to tell, and I'm not sure I want him to tell all of them.
Well, in restoration of the school, Stella got a hold of me, I think, around 1968. And she, being a persistent type lady, she would not leave me alone since I was in the contracting business of going out and seeing this old school and seeing what needed to be done to it. So we went out the one day and seen it, and the next day we started putting a new roof structure on it and a new roof, because it had to have that to be able to last a few more years until they could get the thing ready to restore, or the resources and the people around it to do it. But she kept on it till she got it done. I think she said in 1976 was her first class there after the restoration. But we went through many things to get it back exactly like it was when we went to school there.
Right. Well, we did have some excellent help. If we're going to talk about restoring Honey Creek, we had some excellent help in doing this. You know, we had a steering committee, we had an advisory council, which Harold was on, and many other people in the neighborhood, and everybody worked very hard at it.
Actually, it was very interesting because the school system, with the change of the school system from the city schools to the metropolitan area and then to the Monroe County Corporation, didn't really know they had that building. And they only knew it until when the farmer came in wanting to buy it. So
It
then...
belonged to Benton, it belonged to Marion Township first. And the state of Indiana come in and bought most of the land of Marion Township, and the rest of the land of Marion Township was transferred over to Benton Township, which Unionville schools sit in. That way, it transferred to the Unionville schools. And it was that way until the Metropolitan Schools was formed in 1965.
Right. And I think that probably it's on the other tape, but we did start this out as a project in the arts. We did not know that Honey Creek was going to be involved. And we started out as a project in the arts and had a steering committee and worked with the superintendent. So he called us one day, as Alice said, because we were having trouble finding a place to do the things we wanted to do. And he called and said if the steering committee would come down and talk to him, he'd like to take us out to see an old school that might serve our purpose. And it did.
Yes, and he said we might have trouble finding it, not knowing that Stella had already taught there.
And I didn't know whether I should tell him that or not. It would really date me to do that, you know.
Well, the one-room school was really a part of our heritage. And even today, I see the ideas of the one-room school being incorporated into the most up-to-date modern school. Just recently, I saw a TV program where the school in Indianapolis was having multi-age grouping as something new. Well, really, they're going back to the one-room school.
Well, I think it's very important that we remember the comment I made before, that we are standing on the shoulders of the people that went before. And I think that we are the only people, and you people are the same, who can stand and hold hands with this generation and the former generation. And it's a wonderful feeling, you know. And I think that the community just deserves so much praise for having this happen.
Well, we have enjoyed hearing some of your stories. Now we'll go to a segment here that was made up by the IU telecommunications student, Stephanie Jarman.
One-room schoolhouses were built about 150 years ago. At this time, Americans were searching for land. This land would be used for farms and homes. Education was not a priority. When land was discovered that was unsuitable for farming, schools were built. Because the populations were small, only one-room schoolhouses were needed. Students between the ages of 5 and 20 all attended the same room. Teachers had to prepare lessons to accommodate all students. Many early one-room schools had dirt floors, no electricity, and no plumbing. There were few windows because glass was expensive, so the interior lighting was poor. Heat came only from a fireplace or wood stove. Their furniture was rough and uncomfortable. Supplies were often limited, especially pens, pencils, and writing paper. Students were taught education and discipline. Respecting your elders was a necessity. These traditions of the one-room school diminished as cities grew and the populations increased. Monroe County keeps this tradition alive. Honey Creek School, used in the 1800s, still stands and enables students to experience school life in the 19th century.
Honey Creek School began in 1854 in a little log cabin near where the present school is. Then in 1878, a second school was built, a frame school, and in 1921, the present Honey Creek School was built. So it's been around for quite a while. Honey Creek was preserved as a monument to our history. A group of teachers from the Association for Childhood Education wanted very much to preserve a part of our history for children, to make history come alive for children. And so they thought of the Honey Creek School. One of the members had taught at Honey Creek back in the 1930s. And so this building was preserved as a living history laboratory so that children could come to Honey Creek and see what it was like to go to school a long time ago. You can read about these things in a history book, but to be there and hear the sounds and smell the smells and see the things that were there a long time ago is just invaluable as an educational experience. When the children came, it was the 1870s or 1880s, and we were in that time all the time they were there. And so it was a very exciting kind of teaching because you you're able to bring the children back in reality, back to a particular time, because everything I said and everything I did was what would have been done in those times. All of the 2nd grade and 4th grade classes visit Honey Creek for 1 day. The teachers have been working on a particular unit of social studies in their classrooms, and those kinds of lessons then are emphasized at the school. For example, if a 2nd grade class is learning about how people made their own clothes years ago, at Honey Creek, for example, maybe our writing lesson will be about growing, as we call it, growing your own clothes, or we talk about shearing the sheep, carding the wool, spinning it, weaving it into cloth. But we actually have the wool, and the children can actually card and so on, feel the wool and so forth. And so there's a carryover from the social studies lesson in the classroom to the Honey Creek lessons. With this program, children are actually reliving part of their ancestors' lives. And when you can relate to children things that mean something to them personally, mean something to their families, it becomes a very thought-provoking educational experience. I'm finding more and more, for example, Pam Service, the curator at the Historical Society, and Carla Nicholson, the director of the Historical Society Museum, tell me over and over again how many more children and parents are coming to ask about their heritage and so on. And they always mention their experiences at Honey Creek School. So this entire program is a catalyst for our local history. It's become a very important part of our social studies program, and one that I hope will continue for a long, long time.
We've just had a glimpse of the one-room school, Honey Creek, in operation today. Stella and Harold, I know you have more things to tell us about how it was.
Well, suppose we go inside the school for a while and talk about what went on inside. And I know Harold remembers that better than I, except that I might tell you I was awfully busy trying to keep up with the curriculum with that many grades and 1 or 2 pupils in each one, and fixing the lunch at noon with a big kettle of stew on the stove. Okay, Harold, you tell them what went on with you.
Well, to get things done for the day, she assigned different chores for each class to either get in the wood or get in the water or sweep the floor or whatever chore had to be done before or at the recess times is when that would be done. The class, when the class would be in session, they had chairs that sat at the front of the room, and they were generally, as I remember, just small chairs and generally painted red or some color like that. And that would be the class that she would be working with, but the rest of the class was supposed to be in study period or getting other lessons or whatever. But you could hear what all was going on in the class and made you feel like that you was part of it. And I think that was something that I brought on into life of working with a group of people that were working together to get the education. That didn't make any difference what age you were. You felt a part of what was going on and learning what was being either ahead of your class or behind your class. So I think it's very beneficial to me. And the other thing that the education seemed to me like you had to learn how to memorize a lot in the education we got back in them days, which was brought out into life, as far as I'm concerned, you live from memory very, very much. When working with new equipment and things like that, you have to memorize. Say for running a computer, you have to memorize a lot from that just to get the thing prompt, ready to work. So education in them days was very much that way.
And I might mention that the children did bring a lunch because they often walked a great distance to school, and they did bring a lunch. And in addition to the lunch, as I mentioned at the end of the other taping, we would sometimes have a kettle of hot soup on the stove, but the parents would send ingredients for that, and we would put it together, all of us helping, and put it on top of the big wood stove, and it would be ready when lunch comes. And one little anecdote that I just now thought of was that they did evaluation of teachers at that time by the superintendent coming around and watching you. And one day I was very busy making the soup when he came, and I thought that was an interesting little anecdote. I don't know what my score was for making soup in the classroom.
The discipline that was learned in those schools, I think all the parents, they backed the teacher up very, very well. I know I was out of a family of 11 children, and our dad didn't have time to tell us only one time, but the one thing he would tell us, and it said, whatever correction you get at school, you're going to get the same thing when you get home. So you got a double dose of it because the teacher was always right. So the discipline was taught well in those schools.
Well, I think it was really just like one big family, and as I said, they did help me grow up because there were young children and older children in school at the time, and they all helped me as well as their families. And I have a joyful remembrance of visiting in the homes that means a great deal to me. That still, brings back such pleasant memories of being able to go into each child's home and spend the night, and was welcomed so heartily and made a part of the family. And this also helped me to understand family relationships and growing up together. And I think it made the pupils and I feel closer to each other than might have been otherwise.
Well, thank you, Harold and Stella, so much for your remembrances. We've appreciated and enjoyed your memories. Now for our final segment, Clover Williams will talk to Emily Murray about donations to the museum.
This is Emily Murray, and she's donated quite a number of things to the Monroe County Historical Museum. Hi.
Hi
How
there.
you doing? I see that you have this here.
Well, this is one of my prizes, I think, because I found it at a thrift shop for 99 cents.
Here, let's hold that
And
up.
it's, as you can see, the 1976 bicentennial banner. And this makes it a part of national history and Monroe County history, obviously, because we all celebrate these things. And I saw it in a pile of linens and bought it because I knew the museum had started collecting at the end of the 70s, actually opened in 1980. And I thought there was a good chance they didn't have this, and I was right. So I just, I sort of want to emphasize that there's two things here. Not all things in the museum have to cost a great deal of money for someone to donate, and also that some things have statewide interest or national interest that are truly relevant to the local history too. And as I told you before, I'm not a native of Bloomington, so I tend maybe to expand towards this type of thing a little bit.
Okay. Who's she?
Well, this is a little sentimental thing. Her dress is rather shabby, and I don't know that I want to say the exact year I got her, but I was growing up, and this was, my mother announced that this would be the last doll I was going to get as a toy. And It belongs to the period when we had storybook dolls. I already had a Red Riding Hood and a Sleeping Beauty, and they've long since disappeared. This is the only one that survived. And then they called them character dolls, and there would be brides and bridesmaids and teachers and people with different costumes. And I probably only had 3 or 4 of those. I think you will find that there are collectors that have hundreds of these. And they were most popular in the 40s. That's as close as I'm going to go to dating it.
Oh, but they break. I mean, that's kind
They
of
break
rare.
easily, and like I say, it's been packed away, and the costume is rather poor. I would say that I know some people are reluctant to give things because they know there's a big flea market and collectible market out there. But basically, it's difficult to get a good price for things. And this may be the only thing that I've given to the museum that I would have been able to sell for more than $1. Because most of these things, people just will not do that. Some doll collector, I have seen this at a higher price at an antique store, and I was somewhat horrified because I don't like to think that my toys are antiques. I don't feel that old. And I also thought that the price was just incredible. But it is a nice part of the history of toys, and that was my purpose in giving it to the museum, to fit into the history of dolls and toys.
Have most of your donations been in the family for a while? Or?
It's been mixed. As I said, I found the one piece in a thrift shop, and I found another ashtray in a thrift shop locally and brought them in. But many of the things are things come from a whole family of pack rats and magpies. I choose to be a magpie because it sounds nicer, and it covers the fluent speech, shall I say, for which I'm well known. But magpies just sort of hold on to anything that's curious and interesting to them. And one of the things I've done, and another thing I think people could think about doing, is the total number of small objects, including postcards, small buttons, an anti-draft button, for example, or something like that. I think I've given about 38 items, all of them which cost me very little, if anything. And then over the last 3 years, I've loaned things for special exhibits, and up to 80 items in my house were useful in an exhibit. I think that doll was originally in some Christmas doll exhibit. I'm not positive that I loaned it first and then decided to give it. But I think that's one of the other things that people could do. They can share things. You don't have to give away things that belong to your family, because I think it's only correct that we save things. There's an annual quilt show, and there's no way I would donate the quilts that go back to my grandmother, because I have nieces and nephews who already have their names on those quilts, they think. They've put their name in, let's say. But still, I can share them in that annual quilt show. And I'm sure there are many people out there who have things that are highly appropriate like that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us on Monroe County Memories. Monroe County has many resources for learning about your past. You are always welcome to drop in at the Monroe County Historical Museum at the corner of 6th and Washington.